The scent of sandalwood shaving cream used to represent safety to me, but now it only reminds me of the most calculated deception of my life. My husband, Preston, departed for a business trip in Denver on a chilly Tuesday morning, promising he would return by the weekend. As his car pulled out, I heard the distinct sound of the deadbolt locking from the outside of our security gate. I excused his behavior as protective love, completely unaware that I was being locked inside a trap designed to end my life. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and turned toward the kitchen table, only to notice that my brother-in-law was missing from his usual spot. Bennett was 22 years old and had spent the last 8 years in a wheelchair following a terrible automobile accident. Preston always described the event with a cold, detached voice, claiming it was a permanent tragedy. Bennett had moved into our house 8 months ago when his mother became too ill to care for him, forcing me to become his primary daytime caregiver. I never resented the responsibility of looking after Bennett because he was an incredibly brilliant and gentle person who loved to read science books. Over months of sharing breakfasts, we developed a quiet bond, though he remained completely silent whenever my husband entered the room. I assumed they simply had a complicated history, ignoring the way Bennett watched Preston with intense vigilance. My eyes widened in pure shock when I walked into the kitchen and saw the empty wheelchair, while Bennett stood firmly on his own 2 feet by the stove. He turned around slowly, his expression incredibly composed as he explained that the gas burner valve had been deliberately left fully open. He instructed me to close the kitchen window immediately and avoid turning on any electronic appliances or light switches until the air cleared out. I obeyed his calm directions with trembling hands, feeling the freezing autumn breeze enter through the back door as we waited. I looked at his legs and asked how long he had been capable of walking without his chair, completely stunned by this impossible sight. Bennett sat down carefully in his wheelchair and explained that he had actually recovered his mobility 4 years ago. However, he discovered that Preston had purchased a massive long-term disability insurance policy under his name shortly after the accident. Preston was the sole beneficiary because Bennett was still a minor under his legal guardianship at the time. The lucrative monthly payouts would continue only if Bennett remained classified as permanently disabled, prompting Preston to enforce the deception. He realized his brother valued money over his humanity. The monthly checks were deposited directly into an account that only Preston could access, while Bennett was forced to play the submissive role. I started to recall the exact moments when Preston became visibly irritated whenever Bennett had a good day or showed signs of recovery. Bennett explained that his brother wanted him to remain helpless forever to ensure the steady stream of financial wealth would never cease. The sheer cruelty of the scheme began to sink in, making me realize how little I truly knew about him. He was heartless. I suddenly understood why Preston became so intensely angry whenever Bennett showed signs of physical improvement or independence. Bennett then dropped the ultimate bomb by confirming he heard Preston messing with the stove burners early that morning before his departure. The realization that my husband had deliberately left the gas running to cause a fatal explosion made the entire room spin. Bennett had spent the last 2 years quietly collecting evidence, documenting financial transfers, and recording conversations to protect himself. He was prepared to expose the truth. He opened his laptop to show me a hidden digital folder containing photographic evidence of stolen disability checks and bank transfers. There were also screenshots of text messages between Preston and a mysterious contact designated only by the letter T. They were actively discussing what they would do once the situation at our house was fully resolved. I immediately recognized the contact as Vanessa, a close work colleague whom Preston had always described in a very casual, dismissive manner. She helped him orchestrate this. Bennett reached into his pocket and retrieved a small digital audio recorder, placing it on the wooden table between us. He explained that he kept the device running whenever Preston was home, capturing a chilling conversation from that very morning. I picked up the device and pressed play, hearing the low, calculated voice of my husband speaking to his accomplice. Preston stated he would return early to ensure the house explosion looked like a tragic accident, allowing him to claim the massive insurance payout and eliminate me permanently. This was horrifying. Sitting in that chilly kitchen, I felt a heavy, suffocating wave of grief and betrayal wash over my entire being. The home I had carefully built with Preston was nothing more than a carefully designed stage for my own demise. I looked at Bennett, realizing that this young man had carried the burden of this terrifying knowledge completely alone for months. He had watched my husband pretend to love me while knowing that a monstrous plot was slowly unfolding behind my back. My trust was shattered. I was deeply shaken. The horrific realization that my life was merely an obstacle to be cleared shattered whatever remained of my trust. Bennett gently suggested we call the emergency services immediately, but as I grabbed my cellular phone, I noticed a strange application. It was an unfamiliar software labeled System Sync, showing that call monitoring was currently active on my device. Preston had secretly installed spyware on my phone to track my location and listen to my conversations, meaning we could not use my device to seek assistance. We needed another secure option fast. Fortunately, Bennett pulled a cheap burner phone from his wheelchair side compartment, explaining he purchased it with cash months ago. I took the plastic phone with trembling hands and quickly dialed emergency services, explaining our dire situation to the operator. The dispatcher immediately understood the high level of danger and instructed us to find a highly secure room inside the house. Bennett stood up and walked slowly toward his bedroom, which had a sturdy lock on the door and a wide window facing the front street. He had planned for this. As we sat on the floor with our backs pressed against the mattress, Bennett opened his laptop once again. He immediately began transmitting all his gathered evidence, timestamps, and financial spreadsheets directly to a trusted attorney belonging to his mother. I noticed that he also copied my personal lawyer on the email, having obtained the contact information from a card on my kitchen refrigerator. His quiet, meticulous preparation over the years left me utterly speechless, realizing he had single-handedly built an airtight legal case. He saved us from a certain doom. I quietly asked Bennett why he had waited so long to share these terrifying discoveries with me before today. He confessed that at first he desperately wanted to be wrong about his brother, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. He also feared that I would not believe his claims, worrying his warnings would sound like a bitter family grudge from a jealous sibling. I assured him that I would have believed him instantly, deeply touched when he mentioned my simple kindness of asking about his books. Our friendship gave him hope. We sat in the comforting silence of his bedroom for exactly 11 agonizing minutes, watching the wall clock slowly tick away. Suddenly, the loud sirens of several police cruisers echoed down the street, followed by a heavy knock on the front door. We hurried downstairs together and opened the door, finding multiple officers ready to secure the premises and take our statements. I handed over the digital voice recorder containing the incriminating evidence, feeling a massive wave of relief wash over my entire body. The terrifying danger was finally ending now. Less than an hour later, Preston pulled into the driveway, returning far earlier than his scheduled Friday afternoon arrival. He likely expected to find a devastating crime scene that he could publicly mourn to secure his freedom and wealth. Instead, he was greeted by 2 flashing police cars and a detective holding the digital evidence bag in his hand. Most shocking of all was the sight of Bennett standing perfectly straight on the front lawn without any wheelchair nearby, staring directly at him. His carefully crafted master plan had completely collapsed. Preston tried to flee the scene immediately, but the officers detained him before he could reach the main road. The recorded audio file combined with the extensive financial documentation made the legal case against him absolutely airtight. Both Preston and his partner Vanessa were swiftly arrested and charged with attempted murder and massive insurance fraud. Bennett walked proudly into the courtroom, sitting in the witness stand to deliver his testimony in a remarkably steady, calm voice that captivated the entire jury. They would definitely pay dearly for their terrible crimes now. Following the dramatic trial, I immediately sold the house because I could no longer stand the sight of it. Bennett moved into a beautiful apartment nearby, continuing his physical therapy sessions to restore full strength to his body. He recently enrolled in philosophy courses at the local college and frequently sends me text messages filled with great book recommendations. During our weekly dinners, we talk for hours, deeply grateful for the powerful bond that we managed to build out of such intense darkness. We survived the nightmare together as a family. When I reflect on this harrowing experience, I realize that our survival was entirely due to the choices Bennett made. He could have easily ignored my safety, focusing solely on his own escape from the toxic household we shared. Instead, he chose to spend 2 long, silent years meticulously gathering evidence to protect a sister-in-law he barely knew. That level of quiet integrity is extremely rare, showing that true heroism does not always come with loud announcements or grand gestures. He was my guardian angel in the dark shadows. On my part, I had to confront the uncomfortable truth about my own deep, willing self-deception during those years. I was so determined to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage that I actively ignored numerous warning signs. I classified possessive, controlling behavior as protective love because asking the real questions felt far too terrifying. Self-deception often feels like maturity when we are in the middle of it, but it is actually just a comfortable shield against truths we cannot bear to face. I had to learn this lesson. Now, on the other side of the trauma, I understand that the most dangerous lies always mimic safety. Now, on the other side of the trauma, I understand that the most dangerous lies always mimic safety. The ultimate threat to your life can easily speak in the calm, familiar voice of the person who promised to cherish and protect you. Sometimes, the individual who saves you is the very person everyone else chose to completely write off. Bennett sat in that silent corner for years, keeping his eyes wide open, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the light. I will never take my safety for granted ever again.